So this is for Roger Brooks that we had come, and we had set aside $10,000, but the province has now come through with that amount. And so the recommendation is that council resolve to apply the $10,000 grant received from the Ministry of Forest, Lands, Natural Resource Operations and Rural Development to the Port McNeill Downtown Improvement Plan, and that the town return the allotted $10,000 contribution back to general surplus. Have a motion for that, please? Councillor Downey, seconder. Councillor Barron, any discussion on this? Go ahead, Councillor Cole.
Yeah, I don't think I'm in favor. I think from that presentation, the town has a fair bit of work to do on our own signage and signs in particular. So I would like to see this money stay within for downtown improvement. We set money aside for that. The government looks like they has given us a grant for downtown improvement, so I don't feel we should do a little shell game on that. We should spend it on downtown improvement. We do have a committee. We could work with them, or we could do some of those low-hanging fruit items. And yeah, I note a bunch of those things are public signs and public property. So,
anyone else? Go ahead, Claudia. And then Councillor Ryan. Go ahead, Claudia, and then Councillor Mitchell.
Can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
Okay. The reason this was actually requested by ICE-T to put it back into general surplus. From there, if you want to take it out to spend it on downtown improvement, that's fine. It has to do with when we originally applied, there was matching funds. So this is actually a request from ICE-T, and they kind of need to see this so that, but from there, how you want to spend the money is totally up to council.
So just to clarify, oh, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Mitchell. I'll ask my question afterwards.
Okay, well, I just feel like I don't like using money as found money, which is what this is now. I think if we got a chance to throw something back in the sock for savings, that's what we should do with it.
And my understanding on this, Claudia, is that this $10,000 is from the government is allotted to this downtown improvement. And then you're saying what we do or where we allot, whether it goes to general revenue or as Councillor Cole is suggesting, that's up to us to decide for our 10,000, correct?
I believe what happened when you originally applied, you applied to the rural dividend fund for a certain $10,000. You had the amount that the municipality, the town was putting in, and you asked for matching from funds from ICE-T for $15,000. And I believe we had a donation from a community member. So what happened was the rural dividend said, no, we weren't going to, at that time they said no to the grant. The town decided to take the money out of general surplus. You made a resolution to do that, to have the matching funds so you could go ahead with the program. So what ICE-T, they kind of are looking at this saying, well, you've got this $10,000, you took it out of your general surplus, you can put it back. They need just to see that we're putting it back into general surplus. If tomorrow we decide to spend that money on signs for downtown, let's put that out there, that's fine. That's up to council. They just kind of want to see it go into general surplus. Does that make sense to everybody?
It does. I'm not entirely sure how they can dictate that, but go ahead, Councillor Cole.
So how does this affect the budget? Will this change your budget, or we'll have to reallocate $10,000 somewhere? Claudia?
Well, we haven't received this money yet, and I believe that ICE-T was looking at this because that was the original application. I understand what you're saying about how they dictate, but they're kind of saying, I know what you're saying, we're matching their funds, but they're trying to say, well, if you're getting this and it's not, then we're going to take the problem is we haven't gotten the funds from them yet, so we kind of want to do what they want us to do. But as for our budget, that doesn't really come into play. No.
Okay. That makes sense now. Any other further discussion on that? Did we have a mover? Sorry, I lost track now. We had a mover and seconder on this, yes, and we were discussing. So any other further comments? All those in favor of moving the 10,000 back to general surplus, Barron and Councillor Downey, all those in favor? Opposed, carried. Okay, thank you. Sorry, I'm shortening your names. That's really rude. My apologies. Item 9B. So reallocation of harbor reserves. I'm just going to ask, after Claudia finishes taking a drink, if you can go over this and explain your rationale, and then we'll go through with the recommendation, or we'll vote on the recommendation.
So this was what was requested at the Committee of the Whole meeting, was to use the harbor reserves that were in the harbor towards the municipal ramp PDOC project, which was $600,000, sorry. So this is really just good bookkeeping, kind of keeping everything straight. Because it is a reserve account, and I know there were some questions, well, if it's in the harbor, it doesn't really matter, but there was money put aside for dock miscellaneous, which probably doesn't necessarily, you know, the project would fall under that. But the showers, we want to now take that money that was going to be put towards showers and use it for the large project. And the ramp and dock upgrade was already in there. So it's just kind of a matter of saying that, yeah, council agrees to this. This is what we're going to use these funds for. Okay. It's that accountability, so everybody can see that we're taking those funds and we're going to put it towards this large project.
Okay. So if I can get us to move and second the recommendation, and then we'll go into further discussion on that recommendation, that council resolved to use all of the funds in the harbor reserve totaling $260,000. So Councillor Cole, seconder, Councillor Barron. Okay, for discussion. Go ahead, Councillor Mitchell.
I've talked to a number of people who really feel that showers are really important. And as long as we're not going to lose sight of the fact that we need to have some way of servicing our marine visitors, which this year isn't going to be much of an issue, then I'm in favor of just doing the consolidation and using that money now. But down the road, we're going to have to put that 50 grand with another 100 and build some showers.
I agree with you. Anyone else? Go ahead, Councillor Downey.
For this motion, because we have a lot of infrastructure that needs to be attended to ahead of the showers. And so this is just a ranking of our priorities. So I support this.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, can I have all those in favor? Opposed, carried. Okay, thank you. 9C, 2020 budget and capital projects review. So move for discussion. Seconder. Okay. Sorry, I'm just going to turn my light on. It's getting dark in here. Okay, Claudia, did you want to walk us through here, or?
Sure. So a couple things to note. One was the circular that came from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. And they basically are saying that municipalities, as it states here, we need to be looking at our operations, and because we've already received our requisition from the regional district and the regional hospital, and they are due August the 1st, as they are always due at this time. So that's basically what it's saying in here is part of that circular said the other, we collect taxes for other like police, and RCMP or school, police and school and regional district and etc.
Library.
That we have to pay those. So no matter what we decide to do, those bills will be due. So what they're trying to say is for most municipalities to be really looking at their operating expenses and of course their revenue of what they're going to get in, and also to be looking at what capital items we can look at deferring to next year, like what are really have to be done. With that in mind, we have to remember we do have grant funding for some. So you really should do that, because I'm thinking in the future, like for quite a few years down the road, we might not have a lot of grant funding coming to us because the federal government is putting so much money out and provincial, so much money out to just get us through this pandemic that I'm kind of, I just don't know. I'm almost thinking 5 years. I could be way off. It could be more, it could be less. So with that in mind, I just thought it best to let council know that's where the ministry is looking at. I'm thinking they're not going to really be changing anything with tax due dates. So moving forward, we've actually tried to decrease some of the, like realistically, some of the revenue. Some of it we just won't know, like the harbor, we went down about 50%, but if we can't get visitors here, then that's going to go down even greater. So that being said, as we look towards our capital expenditures, it is up to council to decide what capital expenditures are we going to move forward with, because in all likelihood, we might possibly have to use reserves funds to pay some of these bills in the meantime.
I did want to just say that I had a chat with Pete today, and who also had a talk with Julian, our Public Works manager. And we were all questioning whether 600,000 was the amount at the harbor. And sorry, I'm just going to grab another sheet here. And in talking with Julian, you can correct me if I'm mistaken here. So on the report that McElhaney had given us, Julian was suggesting the sinkhole repairs at 20,000 and 11,520, and not doing the remove and replace the timber trestle, but rather doing a shorter expanse in which to put the longer ramp on, which I think we had all agreed that the 60-foot ramp was what we were going to do. And so that would be, excuse me, another $30,000. And then the ramp itself is 60,000, and then replacing the main float P-dock would be 112,980. That would come, is that correct, Pete? That would come to the 300,000 rather, or sorry, 400,000 if we include the replacing the P-dock, 300,000 if we just did the repairs, the trestle and that ramp, correct?
I think that's what we worked out today. I've got it up on my screen. Did you want me to?
Yes,
share?
please. Yes. Thank you.
And I can move when people would like me to scroll.
So that the thought was it's not actually 600, it would be 400,000 if we did what Julian is suggesting, which is option Is it 2 or 3?
It's a bit of a variation. So it was taking away the timber trestle and the pile cap. So there's a savings there because we just wouldn't rebuild them. And I'm going to move to the other options where they're laid out. Because I think that's where you and I found it today. I think it was option 2 without the trestle replacement.
Laid out. No, that's not it.
It's not it.
The long and the short of it is it isn't 600,000. 600,000 was, as we all suspected, the Cadillac, the best that could possibly be done there. Go ahead, Councillor Mitchell, while Pete's trying to get that going.
Sure. I just noticed as I'm reading that, and I remember this from when we looked at that quote originally. This is a certain level of estimate that is very inaccurate, and it can vary 50% on either side of the set point. So a 400,000 could turn into a 6 or a 2, right? If it's 50% either way.
Well, I added the 30% contingency on that figure. There's actually a little bit more than 30% contingency added there for the
Right.
400,000.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. I just don't see a detailed plan, so I don't know.
Yeah, we had it in our, one of the meetings where, one of our committee of the whole meetings. Or actually, no, it was a council meeting where McElhaney came and made that presentation. It's from that report.
I understand, but I don't see a detailed plan about what we're going to be looking at tonight.
Okay, so I guess the question is going to be, each time we go through this budget, do we need to bring out all of the reports from the past all the time? Because I sense that we're going to get hung up here again, and then we're not going to move any further forward. I'm sort of personally relying on council to go through some of the old reports and to be able to have that in place when we go to make these decisions. Go ahead, Councillor Mitchell.
No, Derek.
Oh, I can't see him, sorry, on the screen. My apologies. Go ahead, Derek.
Thank you, Mayor Wickstrom.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, are we discussing right at the bottom of the budget of changing that $600,000 number? Is that what we're discussing right now?
Yes.
And is the goal to avoid 100,000 out of the community forest reserve as presented?
Well, it's the goal is to save, if we don't have to set aside that amount, to save the money from wherever that's going to come from.
So yeah, I kind of have a problem of just without seeing a plan of what this 600 represents. Like, it doesn't need to be the report. You know, we're sort of, if we're discussing that right now, then I feel there's not enough information, or if we're, yeah, I'm not sure there's no motion on the table or anything, so.
Yeah. Go ahead, Councillor Downey.
I did a tally on that initial document that Peter showed us, and that comes up to about 445,000. 30% contingency takes it to 600. So I believe that's where the numbers come from.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a Cadillac. It is the 60-foot plank. It is replacing the trestle and also addressing PDOT. Right now, I would suggest that because of the potential lost season in the harbor, with the way things are going right now, my preference would be to set aside the full 600 and keep it parked there and go to tender, and hopefully it comes in at 445 or less. I mean, that would be wonderful. But regardless, if we don't spend the money, we still have it and we can allocate it elsewhere. But we do have an opportunity in the lack of a boating season to perhaps get this work done and get it done properly and get it done right away. So I would support leaving it as is.
Before you speak, Pete, I just want to clarify, this was something that we were looking for from Julian, and I was just communicating that maybe ineffectively, but go ahead, Pete.
I'd just like to read out the text that I got from Julian today, might to bring some more clarity to it. So I don't have the paperwork at home, but it was looking more like $400,000, not $600,000. I've spoken with Matt, and we could change the option slightly. In a nutshell, replace PDOC like for like, cut off the hut and install 60-foot ramp. Do not replace the piles for the remainder of the approach trestle, but perform necessary repairs. Also, cut off the first 20 feet of the trestle in the sidewalk of the parking lot where it is sinking, and support it at the lock block wall instead. So I'm going to go back to screen share.
And when we do that, if somebody wants to talk, some of you drop out of the picture, so just unmute and say you want to talk, please. Okay, Councillor Cole, go ahead.
Yeah, that sounds like what we all were talking about, but that doesn't address any sort of hut or a spot for the photograph or any sort of improvement on shore other than the ramp. So I just wanted to note that. I mean, that doesn't mean that's an expensive project, but that will sort of leave the harbor without that feature that we have currently.
Yeah, temporarily, yeah.
So this would be the money right here that we would be saving, where my little hand is going around.
Not just, sorry, I was under the understanding it was only the 210. So you're saying the 30,000 as well?
Yes, because we wouldn't, if we were taking out the trestle, we wouldn't have to replace those piles.
Yeah, okay. Right, because it's timber approach trestle.
I think we got to get a motion on the floor and we can discuss this better. So I'm going to move that we put the whole $600,000 to work,
Okay.
as was suggested by Councillor Downey, and then work with staff.
Seconder for that motion, Councillor Downey? I can't see you, so I'm going to assume that you seconded that.
Yes.
Okay. All right, for further discussion then? Okay.
Is that correct? Did I get it?
Sorry, where motion to put 600,000 towards the ramp replacement project in the, yeah. Go ahead, Councillor Cole.
Is that as per budget? I'm having troubles getting this up. So does that mean we're allocating the money from reserves or different division from the community forest reserve?
Claudia?
Sorry. If you decide, okay, so the reason that it's put out like this is that we haven't made a decision on all these capital items. I know that that was one of the things that I really wanted to have bring forward to council, and to say, this doesn't necessarily have to come out of the North Island Community Forest Fund if we decide to eliminate some of these other expenditures that are not deemed essential this year. Some of that could be like the side, well, no, it would have to be whatever's coming out of the 2020 and a utility field, the 2020 tax and utility fees, such as maybe we'll say we don't need to do the fire hall backup plan because, you know, I've heard different things. That 70,000 seems somewhat high, and maybe we could look at that. I mean, is it something that has to be done this year? I know the fire hoses do need to be replaced. if council's not looking at opening the pool this year, then there's $11,000 savings there. So it's what, you know, you could add more to that, is what I'm saying, and take it and so if you, so for instance, if you said, I'm not doing the fire hall backup, well, that's $70,000 that can now go towards the municipal ramp replacement. So then that brings that only to $31,000 coming out of the North, excuse me, North Island Community Forestry Fund. Does that make sense?
So on that note, I know that Councillor Barron and Mitchell met with the fire department. Do you have anything to report back on that meeting? Go ahead, Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, I had a really good chat with Dean, and he, you know, we talked about some things, and he said he was willing to remove some things from his budget, not remove them, but to put them off for a year. And one of the things that he felt wasn't in his budget, but it's on there, is that 70 grand for the generator. And what they have to do now is run one of their pieces of mobile equipment to provide a generator to charge batteries and run their compressor. They've been doing that for a period of time. It's a pain in the neck, but they've been able to manage. And I think when you balance it off with the low number of structure fires that we do have, they can manage, you know, assuming that we don't all of a sudden have a catastrophe and half the trailer court starts burning one day. You know, that would create some problems with charging, you know, refilling cylinders, because it wouldn't have, maybe the compressor wouldn't be running full bore. But, you know, that's an unlikely situation, hopefully.
And that would be in the event of a power failure for them.
And that would be the event that there was a fire and a power failure. And Dean was super cooperative with doing his part to help reduce our budget. He was really, really, I was just really impressed.
Councillor Barron?
My question was just whether that 20,000 for the mobile tender, since it was a truck, was that going to come out of the fire department reserve, or as is on this, I think by the small writing, it's coming out of utility and tax fees? I don't know what council.
That's totally up to council.
Yeah, and I don't know how everybody else feels. It is a truck. The 100,000 was in there for a truck. Just a thought. That's another 20,000.
Would you like to move that, or anybody else want to chime in first?
Derek.
I'll chime in.
Okay, go ahead.
Do we have a motion on the floor? I'm a little confused, and like, I'm okay with the budget as presented. I think the big question is, are we opposed to using the 100,000 in the community forest reserve? And if we're not all in agreement on that, then there's $100,000 to be found. But I'm in favor of the budget as presented. I'd be interested on the rest of council's opinion, whether we're debating something that we're all in agreement with or not.
Thoughts? Go ahead. Councillor Danny?
You know, many of you know my opinions. We have the funds from our community forest, and they've been set aside for the point in time where we may be able to leverage it and build a facility that would help to meet the needs in the community, such as replacing our pool. We have many properties and many buildings scattered around the community, of which very few are able to maintain a certain level of heating or keep them heated at a level where you could use them in a hurry. They always have to, somebody's got to go in the day before and heat them. So I'm loath to start spending the community forest money when we have funds set aside in other reserve accounts, such as the roads and sidewalks account. We're sitting in there with 310,000, 85,000 has been earmarked for this year, but that leaves us with $170,000 that's been earmarked for a bridge over the Shelley Creek, to access the old school. We also have 200,000 set aside for the old school. So we've set aside and have on hold $370,000 right now, and no decision on the old school at all. We don't know which bridge, or if any bridge, we'll be replacing. And you know, my preference would be, if we're going to be spending money, let's draw down some of these reserves. The thing is that we had set this money aside in other budgets a long time ago. We had a new an interim CFO come in who found all the motions and categorized them and set them up as though they were individual reserves. And what they were funds that were allocated for projects. Projects weren't completed, and the money was sitting in our regular operating account. These motions, these thoughts, these plans we had, our previous CFO, our interim, allocated them to funds. Now they're all, you know, we're looking at them as parked dollars, which isn't the case. They still are our operating funds. We have, some of them are going to be drawn down in this budget, such as Beach Drive. We have 157,129. That allocation that was set up in prior years will be depleted at the end of 2020 if we're able to move ahead with our Beach Drive project. Harbor, we set aside 260,000. With the motion we made today, that just goes into general harbor operating, which we intend to use towards the ramp and the docks, the ramp, P-dock, and fixing that structure around there. So that will be depleted. Our pool, we have 160 there that we've allocated to hopefully get our pool mechanical system replaced. And then stormwater, which is the gas tax, which we've earmarked. All those will be depleted, but we are still, in spite of that, sitting there with, as I say, you know, $510,000 minus the 85. It's just been sitting there, and that money's been sitting there for a number of years. So, you know, maybe the conversation we should be really having tonight is what happens if 50% of our taxpayers can't pay their tax bill.
Mm-hmm.
We will have a cash flow need that needs to be met, because as our CFO has said tonight, paying the school district, paying our regional district, those bills are still coming, and they're still due August 1st. So, you know, if the issue isn't about community forests, I mean, and about funds, but let's spend the money we've got that's sitting in the bank, that's been idle money for a number of years, and let's also talk about how we're going to manage the cash come July 1 if we don't get our tax dollars submitted by our residents.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Cole. You're still on mute. So, there you go.
Did we get an idea of how many tax bills are paid by the mortgage company as opposed to just people without a mortgage, I guess?
Yeah, there's about a third. So a third are paid by mortgage companies, but I have been speaking to other CFOs, municipalities, and we've all noted that if, let's say, council was going to make a move to try to defer taxes, do an alternative tax scheme, then the banks will follow and they will not pay. They'll pay on those due dates also that are deferred. So, but there is about a third that do pay through the mortgage.
Okay. So we had a motion on the table from Councillor Cole. Was it seconded? No.
No, I was just questioning if we had one on the actual table.
Okay.
Was suggesting the budget as is. Just to comment on Councillor Downey's input there. So would that not make more sense to take it out of the community forest money if we have cash flow problems? We don't want to be going there for cash flow. Would we not take the cash flow out of those previous reserves you spoke of? To me, that sort of seems like a better option to protect the community forest money for a bigger project. And I'm possibly agreeable to that, but I don't think the sidewalk and road reserves should go towards the municipal harbor or to make up the North Island Community Forest money as presented in the budget.
Councillor Downey and then Councillor Mitchell.
Just to clarify, those funds were allocated in a budget such as we're looking at tonight. You know, this budget here that we're going to be possibly passing. They were set aside and allocated in a budget much like that. They weren't reserved. They're not a capital reserve or a bylaw reserve such as we have for land and fire, public works in our capital property. They are not a bylaw reserve. And perhaps we wouldn't even be having this conversation if our interim hadn't gathered up all that information and parked it into one category. We wouldn't necessarily know, right? It would just be there's money that we had taxed for a project. That project has never been completed in probably 4 or 5 years now at this point. So I mean, how much longer do you leave those funds parked there? So
Councillor Mitchell? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'll let somebody else speak. I'll come back.
Okay. Councillor Mitchell, you wanted to speak? You're on mute still, sorry.
Okay, I had nothing to say.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Downey.
Sorry, I guess I was going to wonder because Councillor Cole's comment is right. I mean, how do we, if taxes are paid short, where do the dollars come from? And you know, it's going to come from somewheres. So maybe it comes from, you know, borrowing it from our forestry reserve and replenishing that when taxes are collected, and do it that way. In the meantime, we clean up some of these other allocations of funds that have been set aside for and held for a number of years with no action on.
Councillor Cole?
Yeah, and I just want to note as an observer of minutes over the years, you see this money set aside. There's a public expectation. If I'm looking at investing in a community, I look and I can see, oh, they're putting money aside for sidewalks. They're putting money aside in all those reserves. So I take your point, but over the years, you know, moving forward, if you want to do a different model, let's consider that. But you do have to consider this money has been in agendas and 5-year plans all along, approved all along. So there should be a public expectation that money taxed for roads or sidewalks is going to be spent there. Obviously, you know, for a financial crisis, but this budget doesn't really reflect that at this point. Yeah.
Councillor Downey?
On that.
I just wanted to make mention that we do have $50,000 allocated towards sidewalks in this budget year.
Councillor Barron?
I'd like to see the community forest money get invested as a chunk or secured or put somewhere where it's a little bit harder to grab it, so we don't 50,000, 100,000, 300,000 to death over the years. And you're right, Councillor Cole, we're in a crisis. This is a pandemic. It's a crisis year. And I tend to agree with Councillor Downey. The money's kind of sitting there. This is an extraordinary year. Last year, we had money to allocate to all these spots. And then this year, we didn't have the money to allocate. And it just, I'm just having a really hard time with taking it out of the community forest, as we said at the committee of the whole meeting as well. If we have to go there because we don't get the taxes paid so that we can pay our bills with the expectation that we pay it back, great. And then I agree, Councillor Cole, we need to take a look at this model and what is a bylaw reserve and what is a wish list or a spot where we want to park the money, as you put it. Councillor Downey, I don't know what the right accounting term is, but it just seems kind of awkward to have that money sitting there and not use it.
Claudia, you were going to say something? And then Councillor Mitchell after Claudia, go ahead.
Technically, when you do your 5-year financial plan and you make that capital plan, that is an effect, a kind of bylaw, right? I mean, you're saying you're going to put this money aside for a certain project. As I was saying to, as I said to somebody else, okay, let's just take the old school, and let's say lightning strikes it and it disappears on us, or somebody comes along and says they want to buy the old school, right? And we want to sell that. So we've put aside this funds for the old school demolition, I believe it was, or to fix it up, I'm not sure, one or the other. And now we don't need to do that because we've sold it. So in that case, we would want to take a resolution and say, well, we're going to take it out of reserve, because it's not technically a statutory reserve, but we have at some point said this is what we're going to do with that money. So for the accountability to the public, we need to say, well, we're going to take this money out and use it somewhere else. As for what's happening right now, that is one of the things that the ministry is saying, that we have to be prepared as municipalities to dig into our reserves. Now, they've given permission, because normally you cannot use your reserves for operating at all. So they have said that they are giving us permission to do that this year, with the idea that when we receive the money, so when taxes are paid, because eventually they will be, we will replenish that reserve. So no matter what we do, no matter which one we take it from, unless that has to be replenished, unless we've made a resolution to use it for a capital project. Does that make sense to everybody? I hope.
Yep. Councillor Mitchell? Mute. You're on mute still. Sorry.
Sometimes that space bar thing doesn't work.
Yeah.
I guess for me, the guiding principle is I look across the street at my neighbors that are loggers and I go, what are they doing? Well, they're pulling their belts in. They're not renewing the insurance on the second car. They're not putting plates on the boat trailer. They're not doing some things to save bucks because there's not much money around. That's our job, because that's what they want us to do. So whatever we do here tonight needs to reflect that.
So how do we get to the place where we are eliminating some of the, not eliminating, deferring some things? And I just wanted to make one point on, which is frustrating me. It's a political statement, but it's frustrating me with the provincial government and the federal government, in that we're expected to use our reserves. And, this is the time now. And, we have to operate. We can't operate in a deficit. We understand that. And municipalities, especially a small municipality like ours, we try to be very, very diligent at watching where our money goes and not spending excessively. And when we tuck some money away for an infrastructure project, and we see the federal government giving the kind of money right now, running a deficit, like Claudia had said, we don't know, and I saw Councillor Downey shake her head in agreement, we don't know that there's going to be any infrastructure money even coming our way in the future. And so, now we're being told this is the time to spend from your reserves, and they're looking at us, but we're also looking at the future so that we're not so forestry dependent, and we want to have some of that money so that we can actually do something and to attract people and maybe diversify our economy. And it's very frustrating to me. So that's my soapbox moment for you. I'm just finding this all very difficult. But back to the question, how do we get, like, what are the things that council sees that we could defer for another year, that we could work within our means, or do we think that there's anything that we could defer? Because I believe this is what staff is looking to us for, correct? Claudia's nodding.
Yes, correct. I'm looking for council to say that this, we feel that this could wait a year, and no matter, regardless of where the funds are coming from, whether they're coming from the taxes or whether they're coming from a reserve, that's council's decision to make.
And I will note that we have heard from Councillor Cole that he would accept this as it is presented. So perhaps there are a majority that feel that way, and I don't want to belabor a process that maybe we don't have to go through. So input from council, please, on that. Go ahead, Councillor Mitchell, and then Councillor Cole. Your space bar didn't work again, Councillor Mitchell, sorry.
Okay. The last thing I want to do is deplete the community forest reserve by $400,000, which is what this budget is recommending. And I think my target personally was 200,000. If we can get away with that, the beach drive mitigation, and find some savings on the rest of it, put that generator on the back burner and so on, and simply just reduce the budget for administration and for the fire department to the numbers that are going to allow that 70 grand comes out, and look for $200,000 to do it. Maybe we got to drop the marina down to 500 instead of 6. I'm willing to do that.
Anyone else? Oh, sorry, Councillor Cole, my apologies.
Yeah, I just want to note we already did approve 200,000 from the Community Forest Reserve. We're not backpedaling on that. And yeah, if there's savings to be found, I'm not a fan of just robbing that one particular fund, roads and sidewalks. Other than that, I'm open to ideas.
Councillor Downey, and then Anne-Marie, are you putting your hand up because because it isn't quite your screen? I can't quite see your hands, that's all.
No, I apologize. I'm flicking my pen.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Councillor Downey, go ahead.
In light of the situation financially, provincially and federally, the active transport, we have 25,000 set aside, hoping for a matching grant. And I wonder, how realistic is that? Are we going to do the project if we don't receive the matching grant? And if the answer to that is no, then perhaps we should set that aside. And if perchance that grant shows up, well, then we'll discuss it. But odds are not in our favor of any grants right now.
And
So
just to
active
clarify,
transport,
if we pulled that out and we did get the grant, we can amend the budget, correct? Yes.
yeah.
Yes, you can.
So Councillor Cole, that wouldn't mean the active transportation is dead. It would just mean that we would be amending a budget and pulling it out of another reserve if we did get the grant.
Yeah, that might affect our success in the grant. All of a sudden, it's not reflected in any of our documents that we're not putting any money aside for it. That'd be an easy no for them. We have no idea if they have money set aside for this program or not, or if that's changed. If we had that inside information, I might support that. And it goes both ways. If all of a sudden things are that rough, then we can make that decision later. That's only 25,000 out of, I guess, 200,000 is what we're looking for. So I'm interested in the other ideas. If we're going to chip away at the, I'm still a little unsure if we can just move some of those reserves around that we put aside for the community, the old school, for example. If the old school's still standing, can we, draw that down by 100,000, Claudia? clarify, please?
Yes, if you make a motion to do that, certainly. A resolution, you can do that.
I have a question for you, Claudia. I know that council, we had discussed the pool and Julian needs 6 weeks notice. So we would have to make a final decision by June 1st to meet a June 15th opening. But Claudia, what do you know the figure if we did not run the pool, what we would save? I should have asked that question earlier of you, sorry.
That's okay. Quickly here, it's between 80 and 100,000. So I'm just going to quickly bring it up here.
Okay. So just throwing it out to council, I know that it's a hideous thought to everybody. Yeah.
On page 23, which has our the operating budget, there's a line item there under titled pool for $100,086 for the expense side of our pool. What that entails fully, I didn't.
Would that be heating, wages, or is wages somewhere else? You're on mute, Claudia.
Sorry, that the costs that would stay stagnant are the insurance, electricity. There's a couple others. So and you're still going to probably paint the pool, which we put in there was 10,000. So that's why I'm saying you're probably looking at a savings of about $80,000 because you're still going to have some expenses in there and you're going to have absolutely no revenue coming in. So out of your expenses, I'm saying that $20,000 is still going to be applicable to cover the insurance and painting and some your telephone. You still have a telephone there and those kind of items.
Okay.
Was there a percentage decrease in the operating budgets? Like Ryan was saying, tightening our belts. Because when I look at page 21, the stuff in the squares, is that meant to be a reduction in our operating budget? Because the public works admin, I don't believe that's a decrease when we're replacing a worker. The decrease to travel and training, okay, that would be a decrease in the operating budget, not doing the software. But has that actually been a really good go through to get sorry, that's my dog with her new toy. Has there been like a real forthcoming look at tightening? We're all doing these meetings now. I mean, is our paper budget going to go down 25% this year because we're not printing everything as much? Like, have all those sorts of things really been exhausted as far as tightening the strings? If we're doing all the public works are going in singles in trucks, we've actually probably increased things. So, and then is there any opportunity through the COVID relief? Are we eligible for any of that? Because we definitely are increasing our expenses because of that.
Oh, you were off mute. Now you're back on mute, Claudia. Sorry.
Sorry about that. I just can't figure that out. As for the salary and benefit for that worker, that is correct. That's a decrease, even though we've increased because we're looking at hiring somebody full-time, but for half of a year, we haven't had a higher paying person that we're paying for. So we actually it actually decreased that much. So that was a bonus there, I suppose, in some ways. And we don't anticipate that worker being available to come back until halfway through the year. As for going through the paper, no, we haven't like deciding that, because as you said, then you have other expenses. So some of those offset. Some of those, our costs are stagnant, insurance, telephone, those kind of ideas. And a lot of the ramifications, I think it's hard for all of us to even grasp at this particular time, because we really don't know how long this is going to be in effect. That being said, as we go along, we're going to be adjusting things. If we see, it's pretty easy. If you see halfway through the year that we're less than half of the expenses, we're going to adjust the budget as such, and we bring that forward. Those adjustments always have to be brought forward to council before, and they'd have to make a motion to approve those. There is going to be a decrease in revenue, but at this point, once again, how much do we decrease the harbor revenue? Because do we know for sure there's going to be no visitors? That I can't answer. As soon as we know that, I would hope that we would adjust those figures. We are looking at things decreasing. I would say, the campground too would be decreasing. And there's questions to be asked moving forward with that, because there's lots of work to be done.
Councillor Cole, you had a question?
I don't believe we have a motion on the floor, but I'd like to make one that we permanently or close the pool for the season in an effort to save those operating costs. Let's make that motion for discussion, I hope.
Can I just get clarification? So we vote.
A motion that we haven't voted on yet, which was to spend $600,000 on the pool. Unless this is an amendment to that motion, we need to vote.
Sorry, 600,000 on the pool. You mean the revenue, the harbor, right?
Sorry, the harbor, yeah.
Okay.
That motion is what we're debating. I know we got a little sidetracked, but
Okay.
we got to clean that up first.
Okay. Any further discussion on that harbor? Well, I guess we got sidetracked because we were ascertaining whether the 100,000 was going to come out of the community forest. That's why we got sidetracked.
Right, by closing the pool, we're $85,000 closer to not using that reserve.
I think we can vote on the motion, because where the money comes from is what we've been discussing, but the expenditures is what the motion speaks to.
Okay. Any further discussion on that motion then? All those in favor of 600,000 allocated to the harbor for those repairs? Opposed? Carried. Okay. Councillor Cole. No, I wanted to, before I entertain your motion, I just wanted to make sure this is something that we voted on last time, and whether or not to close the pool. And because I remember I voted against everybody else. And so Pete, I want clarification. Am I the one who has to be able to bring that back then, or can Councillor Cole introduce it under this current budget situation? Yeah, I can't hear you. You're muted. Or you're probably doing that on purpose. You're muted. Mute. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Wow, it was so eloquent too, and I don't think I'm going to be able to repeat it. I do believe, without looking at the community charter, which I would really like to do, but I do believe if Councillor Cole has the support of the majority of councillors, you can bring it back, or the mayor can bring it back on her own.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Mitchell.
Clarify that for you. If you're bringing an identical motion back for reconsideration that's already been a resolution created on, the only person who can do that under our procedure rules is the mayor. In some towns, it's different, but in Port McNeil, it's the mayor.
So question, that last motion that we made, Do you remember exactly what, did it read exactly as Councillor Cole did, or?
Yeah, I think there's room in that, in the motion, the way it was worded, defer the opening of the pool till July 15th, or until further information is, and things have gotten a lot worse since we made that decision on April 3rd. So I'm looking at page 4 of our, that was committee of the whole meeting, and then of course it was ratified after that.
Yeah.
But either way, if the mayor wants to bring it forward, that's fine. But I think the way that motion is worded, you know, we've had more information. I should be able to bring that motion forward.
Absolutely. It has nothing to do with bringing exactly the same motion forward. You're bringing a new motion forward based on the information that's come and been provided for in the old motion. So no, you're not asking to revisit that motion. You're asking to make a new one.
Okay, so then is there a seconder for Councillor Cole's motion? Okay, further discuss. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Pete.
Can you please repeat the motion? All I got is motion to close the pool for the season.
I think that explains it, and I think obviously it's the savings would to reduce our budget. So I don't think it really needs to be worded as such. I did, yeah.
Councillor Downey, and then Councillor Mitchell. Go ahead, Councillor Downey.
Sorry, I didn't have anything.
Oh, okay, Councillor Mitchell.
There we go. Okay, it's working. I just wanted to say that Julian brought it forward the last time I spoke with him, that it was really important to be able to let the staff know if we're going to open or not, because they got to look for other job opportunities. So we wouldn't just be saving money, we would be treating our staff with respect, considering that on the basis of probability, balance of probabilities, it ain't going to open anyway.
You know, and on that note, just because the pool wouldn't be opening doesn't mean that we couldn't take that staff, any that didn't find work, and because I would assume those that are not finding work are going to come back home, because if they haven't got any work to pay rent, they're going to be moving back home again. That doesn't mean that we couldn't hire those students to do some sort of recreational program, you know, games in a, you know, one of our parks or something like that. That doesn't mean we couldn't get inventive and still offer them employment. Okay. Sorry, any other further, Councillor Downey, did you want to say something? And I can only see 4 people now, so my apologies. When we go to this screen, it's not great for me as a chair.
I'm not sure that we have a seconder for the motion. I didn't get one.
Yes, anyway. it was Councillor Cole, and then Councillor Mitchell seconded it.
Thank you.
Okay. So further discussion on this.
Yeah, if I could just chime in one more time, this might make getting the pool mechanical work done a little easier, more predictable, and possibly better timing or a better bid as well.
Councillor Downey?
I'm absolutely torn on this one. I really am. I understand that, yes, it makes sense to release staff to go and find jobs elsewhere should that opportunity arise. But the likelihood is if another pool can offer them employment, well, probably we could be too. I can't think of any programs we can offer where under the current situation we are that would employ them. The only opportunity I see for students right now in our town is going to be with, you know, groundskeeping and parks and you know, just a laboring, getting a chore list done, so to speak, for our town, whatever that looks like, fire hydrants, culverts, whatever. That's what I see. Yeah, like I said, I'm just torn.
I know.
I think even just opening for a month, you know, having just a sense of freedom. But I think that's why I liked the original motion to defer and wait. But I certainly understand where Councillor Cole and Mitchell are coming from.
Can I ask our CAO, Pete, how many do you anticipate could be hired? Or is that unfair to ask you that? Like the harbor is right now operating minimally. There is no visitor center. We won't probably be greeting any guests. Public Works, probably there is work there that could be done. A guesstimation.
It's with the harbor is a tough one, just due to the travel. If the travel restrictions get lifted, we could see an influx of people, and if we're understaffed, it could leave us in a bit of a bind. And the argument could be that there's going to be a lot of students without work, but there's always the training period to get them up and going. I would like to see at least 2 or 3 at the harbor, just the just in case.
And summer student funding, am I correct in that they changed now to 100% funding if we're successful in getting them? There's no,
Yeah.
I know this is so hard. Like, how do you make, as a council, the pool is dear to us because it's not only employment, it's fun after a really lousy time, self-isolating. And then there's the harbor, which takes, the training. Both jobs take the training and the setting up. I'm struggling with it all around.
I don't know the legalities, but is there an option to, close off a portion of the harbor daily and have swim lessons in the ocean? Still use some of them.
Different type of lifeguard. You need a different type of certification.
Okay.
At least when I was involved, you did.
Councillor Cole, you wanted to, go ahead.
Yeah, and I just wanted to know, like, if we're in a belt tightening mood, we're adding a full-time public works person at a pretty big expense, and those expenses don't go away once you hire somebody. They're year after year, not like a piece of equipment. Just wanted to remind everyone, as we're worried about staffing levels, that we are, the perception by the public, we're adding a whole extra person there, which I don't necessarily agree or disagree with, but in case we haven't thought of that, that's another spot to save some money.
And that's still proceeding? Claudia, was under operating?
Yes, that's under operating, but we already decreased that because at this time we don't have, the one person is still on short-term disability, and I'm not even sure when they're coming back. So, but that is something that you'd have to actually talk to the Public Works foreman. I know that he felt very strongly that he needs that extra person. And I'd probably say for the size of the operation that he runs here, I don't tend to disagree with him. I actually agree with him. So I've seen smaller municipalities have 8 people in their public works. So, but that being said, that's totally council's decision.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor Mitchell.
I'm trying to figure out what we're debating. I'm sorry. Is there a motion on the floor?
No, there isn't at this point now. Oh, sorry. Yes, there is. Yes, there is.
Motion to close the pool for the season.
I call the question.
Okay. All those who in favor and opposed? Carried. Ugh.
Sorry, Anne Marie.
Okay. Did we also make a decision to defer the backup power for 1 year? Is that what I heard council suggesting?
I would motion that.
Okay, a seconder is Anne Marie. Or
Can
no?
I do that friendly amendment thing?
Sure.
Is it a defer or is it, oh, I guess we don't know the money amount. Yeah, never mind.
It would be deferred to 2021.
Is that about, oop. Is that about right?
Is anyone else having problems expanding Pete's screen to see the writing? Or is it just me?
No, mine's full screen.
But you guys are on.
Yeah, I'm on a laptop though, it's different.
I'm on a laptop as well.
Yeah, the only thing that happens is I only get 4 people and then I don't see when somebody wants to speak.
Is that better?
Is that better, Derek?
Yeah, I guess better, but I guess what I'm wondering is the intention of changing the backup power to pull that 70 out and then the 46 and the 10,000 under rescue tools. The stuff that's currently under this proposed budget coming out of the forestry. So we would tax for that 46 and 10 and then remove the 70. Is that the intention of deferring the 70?
Yes.
Okay. I tend to be in favor of that then.
So Claudia, oh, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Mitchell.
I just want to state that I'm not in favor of this motion because I think that we should simply take it out of the budget. I believe the number is inflated and we need to get a much better price than that for 10 kilowatt generator that we require for that job. It's just way too much money. And we need to figure out another way to shop because it seems like we're using the price, we're finding the prices based on what somebody charged before. And that's not making any sense to me. I could do much better and I'm sure somebody else could if they took the time. So I think we should just take it out of the budget and it's gone. And if they want to bring it back at a more sensible number, then we could deal with it.
And but you're recording that as deferring the fire department generator purchase. That's not what that is not what's on the list. It's for backup power. I would support purchasing a generator that would get the compressor up and going, which I think would be probably $5,000 or $7,000. But the backup power, I think, is actually to do with the wiring into a generator for the whole building. There's quite a difference there, right? The $70,000 is wiring and doing whatever has to be done to hook the generator up to power the whole building.
Got it.
Right now, they're pulling the rescue truck out, running the rescue truck in order to generate power when we had the 2-day power outage, the 3-day power outage, to power their batteries, to power pagers, kind of that stuff you need to plug in. But my understanding, you can't use the rescue truck to power up the compressor. So again, it's not purchasing a generator, because purchasing a generator to only run the compressor is one thing. $70,000 to rewire the whole hall is a completely different thing.
Gotcha.
I can't unmute.
My thought in the discussion that was had with our fire chief was that he was okay with deferring this until 2021. Is that correct, or have I misunderstood?
Ryan, you're on mute. Sorry.
That
Right.
number wasn't, number wasn't put in there by the fire department. That number was put in there by Public Works. The fire department would like to have some backup power, but they're not in control or had anything to do with putting that number in there, which was why Councillor Mitchell was asking for it to be taken out of there. I asked at the beginning for it to be taken out because that is a public works. That's how we as a town are controlling our asset.
Mm. Ryan, you had said something, you were still on mute. I'm sorry, I didn't catch it.
I'll get this figured out yet. Yeah, I don't remember where I was going with that, but yeah, when I talked to Dean, they were okay with not having a generator to do that job this year. They could manage another year. We didn't really get into the automatic switching equipment so that it would, when the power goes out, the generator would fire up and they would be just like they were at home. But I'm not sure that they need that. And so we need to make sure we buy stuff that's suitable for what we have. We're just a little town. And we just, oh, it's all great to have fun to have stuff. But he wasn't big on that. He was more big on having stuff to take care of his men, which that was less of a priority. That generator was much less of a priority for him.
And Maria, I would tend to agree with you on that. It's an asset thing and under public works, because I believe that Julian's impetus probably here is that it would be backup power for ambulance as well, who is a renting tenant, right? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so there was a motion to defer should we amend it to say the fire, it's not just the fire department backup power, it should be the fire hall or fire/ambulance hall backup power, because it's not solely for the fire department.
Fire department building works.
Yeah, or fire department building, yeah. Okay.
And could you refresh my memory who seconded that at the beginning? I missed it again. I apologize.
Shelley.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? I can't see you all, so say if you're opposed. Carried. Okay. And so, Claudia, would that mean we have, there's 96,000 still? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Cole.
Then I'm going to make a motion that we fire department rescue tools for 46,000 and the fire department forestry pump and bladder for 10,000 be taken out of 2020 tax or utility fees, not the North Island Community Forest Reserve as presented.
Seconder on that. Okay, that's Councillor Downey. Just gonna wait till Pete writes this out here.
Could you please repeat the motion?
Well, it won't be as eloquent as the first time. I'm going to make a motion that we take the fire department rescue tools at $46,000 and the fire department forestry and pump and bladder at $10,000. Take those expenses from the 2020 tax or utility fee revenue. And I don't think I need to say the bit about the community forest.
Could we add to that the brine truck and the municipal dock? The brine truck for 40 and municipal dock for 100 and change. Move those as well over.
And sorry,
That
what was
would
the
leave
second?
us with, that would leave us with only 200,000 coming out of the community forest for Beach Drive mitigation.
What was the second one, Councillor Downey? I apologize.
The brine truck, and also the 101,000 for the harbor ramp and P-dock project.
I'm opposed to those amendments. I think they should just be separate because it doesn't really say where the money's going to come from. Or I guess you're saying from tax revenue.
I am saying coming from tax.
So we're not Yeah, Claudia, please.
I was going to say, what would that increase be? Tax? Yeah, I guess it's,
Well, we've already cut 70 for the backup power, eliminated all pool expenditures for
Right.
operating.
right.
And active transport, I don't know if that was voted on or not. It was a suggestion.
I don't think we voted on that. Councillor Mitchell?
I guess we haven't got a seconder for that motion yet, I don't think. So I would suggest that the motion be that we limit what we take out of the reserves, the forest reserves at 200,000, and allow staff to come up with a plan to take the rest of the money out of other reserves. And then, because we don't really have the skills to figure that out, but they do. So why don't we just leave that to them and not raise taxes to get more money, but take it out of existing reserves. As Shelley pointed out, we've got existing reserves. If Claudia has a few hours to go through it all, she'll probably figure out a way if we just get out of the way.
Go ahead, Claudia. You're muted. You're muted.
Gosh, I do this every time. Okay. I think that with the changes that we've made, because we've also taken $11,000 out of the preseason for the pool, but so that would, I think we'd still, council would still have to make a decision on the brine truck. That's the only one that couldn't be funded out of the tax dollars that we've saved. So we could take the 101 for the municipal ramp. Doc would come now out of the 2020 tax. The $46,000 for the rescue tools would come out of tax, and the $10,000 for the forestry pump and bladder. But that 40,000, we only have, $4,000 to work with in the balance there, so that couldn't work. So whether council decides not to do that this year, that's up to you.
So
Wasn't
Claudia,
the brine truck coming out of the Public Works equipment reserve?
yeah, that's my question.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're unmuted.
Okay. Yeah, I did it right this time. I don't know why I'm getting dyslexic with that this time. No, I don't recall that. That wasn't, it definitely could be. That would, let me just see.
That's what the reserve was set up for, was equipment. That was the discussion, because and actually there's something missing there, because the weather station, you've deferred it, or it's been deferred to 2021. My argument at the last meeting was it's a piece of equipment, and if it's desperately needed, then it should come out of the equipment reserve because it's equipment.
I believe that was agreed that it would just be deferred, that it wasn't.
I disagree. I recollect Councillor Barron's recollection of it.
I do as well, Claudia.
I do
Sorry.
too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, both of those I show is coming out of the equipment reserve.
Then my error. So with that, they certainly can come out of equipment, which we have, so that would leave those two items. Just trying to see where the weather station was. That 25,000. Oh, there it is. Weather station was 14,000.
Claudia, before you go too much further, I do believe the weather station, after the last meeting, we were told to tighten our belts. So we went back and talked to the Public Works manager, who requested that get deferred to 2021, begrudgingly. But yeah, he said we could live a year without the weather station.
But if it's begrudging and the money's in the equipment reserve and it's a piece of equipment, then do it. Because we had problems this year, or I at least had people calling and saying, hey, how come Public Works didn't get out on time this year? Like, how come it was colder? And that's supposedly why he wants the weather station, is so that they can have accurate weather to go off as to whether they go out and de-ice or not. So if it's that big of an operational, it's a piece of equipment, comes out of the equipment, there's money there.
That was an equipment failure this year. The plow truck actually broke down for about an 8-hour period.
Okay,
Could
hold
we-
on. Can
the
we,
motion on-
hang on, I was gonna say, we got a motion. Let's deal with the motion that's on and then we can talk about this other. Is that what you were gonna say, Councillor Downey?
Well, I just, that the motion, I had amended it to include the brine truck. That should be struck from the motion.
From what Claudia says, we don't even need a motion. I'll withdraw my motion. And it sounds like the only motion we need moving forward is the brine truck, correct?
Is that correct, Claudia?
I don't recall what your motion was.
It says, it's on the screen here, so motion
Oh,
to take,
right.
yeah. So you're-
Yeah, you don't really need a motion. I'll just change it around. I was using that
Yeah.
North Valley Community Reserve Funds because that's the only other means that we had to do it. So once we have those other items removed from out of our 2020 tax, we can just defer those over. Absolutely.
okay. So you withdraw that motion then, Derek?
That's correct.
Okay.
I'll make another one while I got the floor. That we take $40,000 for the brine truck refit and $14,000 from just the $40,000 from the brine truck refit from the equipment reserve and the weather station from the equipment reserve, as Public Works sees fit. Or I don't know if we need that. But.
I'll second that.
Call the question.
You want to wait till it's finished typing out or not? Well, there was a request to see it written, so I just want to make sure that it's captured correctly.
Good idea.
That's great.
There you go. Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. So just to clarify, staff, you have what you need for the budget now? Claudia? I can't see you, so I don't know if you're talking unmuted. Oh, you're muted. Okay.
There, I'm unmuted. Yes,
Okay.
I have what we need.
Okay, excellent. Okay. Moving on then to item 10A, council reports. Nope. Okay. I know that for myself, I've been on regular phone calls with the government every Thursday. And I know a number of us are Councillor Downey and a few others, wherever there is a webinar of some sort of informational session for businesses or tourism or whatever, we're all still engaged and we're still finding out all of that. Did you want to add anything to that, Councillor Downey? And then Councillor Mitchell, you wanted to speak?
I have some notes that I'll have to double check if I sent them around to you, and it just basically covers off where the province is working in terms of a tourist season for this year. And anyways, if I haven't forwarded them, I'll just double check my email and send that out to you. But I think I had mentioned it last week that they're looking now at Dream Now, Visit Later is their messaging, and their focus is on the recovery. So I think maybe if I could just in the free time here, is I think that we were going to have the discussion about, what does recovery look like? Where and how are we going to move? We've passed this because, hiding in our houses for the next 3 months is I have family living with me. That's fine. There's a lot of people living alone.
Mm-hmm.
And until there's testing, or do we pressure the government for more testing so that we can find out who is asymptomatic, who isn't? we might have some advocacy that we need to do, because I don't believe we can be holed up in our houses for 3, 4, 6 months. That's not realistic. There are tools out there, and how do we access them, and what is the cost? So.
Okay, Councillor Mitchell?
Just a brief report. I've made it my mission to contact just a few seniors that I know that need to be regularly contacted, and just make sure they get somebody to talk to once in a while. I have nothing to do but talk on the phone anyway, so it works out pretty good. And our CAO Pete referred one person to me who needed somebody to talk to. Really didn't need any help, but he just needed somebody to chat with, and I'm willing to do that. So it was fun, and I don't mind doing it at all. So that's what I've been doing. I haven't done anything else useful, but I've had fun doing that.
That's very useful, Ryan, very useful.
Very good.
Yeah. Anybody else? Okay, so item 11, there's no items this time to cut from in camera to be made public, but I would like motion to go in camera under section 91C, labor relations and other employee relations, and 91A, information that's prohibited, or information that, if represented in a document, could be prohibited under section 21. So Ryan,
Moved.
second. Okay. All those in favor? Okay, opposed, carried. Okay, we'll move to the questions from the public first, please. Pete, you'll have to let me know if there are any questions from the public.
Nothing so far.
Okay. And I did see a note come in from Bill McQuarrie saying there are no questions from the media.
Correct.
I'll just give the public one final few moments here. Okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn and to go in camera, please? Moved. Anne Marie and Councillor Downey. Seconder. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, great. Thank you very much, everybody. So we'll exit from this meeting and go into the next one for in camera. See you shortly. Oh,
And we just open up another link for that one.
yes, there's another email from Pete. Yeah. Okay.
Time, do we have 5 minutes or?
Sure. Let's convene in 5 minutes. That'd be great. Okay.